Hi everyone. Today I would like to talk to you a little bit about reconnaissance in the context of more advanced security topics and our introduction to pen testing and ethical hacking. So, reconnaissance is one of the first steps that we would take after we have agreed to do a pen test on a company. So, let's say, for example, we have agreed that we are going to follow the contracts, follow the rules, follow all of the scope and rules of engagement for performing a pen test on a company. One of the first things that we are going to do is we are going to start gathering the information that we need to get a good picture of what this company looks like. Now, when we are working on our recon, we want to make sure that we're starting from non-invasive and then we are working up to more invasive tools. Now, ping is not technically exactly an invasive tool, but it is more noticeable. So one of the things that we have when we talk about non-invasive tools, or OSINT, open source intelligence, is this is sort of how noticeable this is going to end up being from the company's perspective. So we don't necessarily want to inform everybody that we are performing a pen test. So a non-invasive tool might be something as simple as Google. Let us Google around to go figure out what's going on with this particular company. There's really no way for the company to know that we are Googling them, and frankly, for most companies, oh no, I've Googled you isn't really a threat in any way. Whereas something like some of the tools that we're going to get to, those are going to be a lot more noticeable. So let's look at sources. Now, some things we might want to think about is we have the basic knowledge, sure, we can all type something into the Google search box, but it's really important that we think about all of the different ways that we can use Google. So we can do a lot more than just type into the search box. We can do things with keywords. So we can look specifically at the company's website. We can specifically look not at the company's website. We could specifically look for passwords or RSA tokens. We could look for things like PDF files or documents, stuff like that. We can look at cached pages or archived pages, and you really want to think beyond just typing the name of the company into the search bar. Think about all of the things that you can do using just search engines, and then think about the pieces of data that we're looking for. So, sure, there's going to be some stuff that's going to pop up about the company that we're searching for, but think high level. Think about who's in charge. Think how they're making their money, what money comes in, what money goes out. What's the structure of the company? How many departments does the company have? What's visible from the outside? So, do they have servers or pieces of information that are more visible from outside of the company? Do they have things that they're looking at from that? But we really want to have a big picture view of the company. Is there a sales department? Is there a developer department? Is there a marketing department? Is there a C-suite? What kind of management structure do they have? All of those pieces to sort of tell us more about the company. Is this a small company? A large company? What's their business? How do they make money? We have to look at all of those things. A footprint of a company is what we can see from the outside. So this could be things like what IP ranges do they have? Do they have name servers that we can see? Can we tell what operating systems they're using? Are they a Windows only shop? Do they subcontract to somebody else for their help desk? Do they have a hybrid network? Do they have Windows and Linux systems? Are they a place where they have a lot of creatives, so they have a lot of Mac usage? We want to look at things like, can we tell if they have an intrusion detection or intrusion protection system? What kind of network devices do they have? Can we look at, for example, their job postings? Job postings are likely to actually be a treasure trove of information, because if they say, they're looking for a system administrator who is conversant in Windows and Linux, we know they're probably got hybrid. If we see that they are only asking for Windows and Active Directory, we know that Maybe they don't. Maybe they're just a Windows only shop. Maybe they have buckets of data. How are they storing their databases? Do they have some variety of customer, even if they don't call it a customer? Where are they storing that information? Can we find that out? And these are the kinds of things that we're going to want to ask a search engine or search engines about first. What kind of information do we have that we're sharing about this? Now, for the data that we're looking for, we want lists of names, we want jobs and emails, we want to see if we can find any personal information quickly and easily. We want to look for any documents that might be uploaded, and we want to look for financials and company structure. We want to make sure that we have a really good picture of what this company looks like so that we can go in with our plan. Now, normally I would do an activity here. That's going to be a little bit hard to do like this. So normally the activity would be starting to practice some OSINT. So instead of looking up a company, try doing some OSINT on yourself. Start Googling for your name. What else can you find besides your name out there? What sites are you on? Are you able to attach your name to maybe popular nicknames that you have or gamer tags or anything like that? So after we've done the OSINT portion, that's going to be the most non-invasive part. We can get a little bit more invasive. We can start looking at their DNS. We can start looking at their servers. We could start doing some web scraping. So if they have a website and maybe they have an employee list on the website, we could start scraping that. We could start looking for metadata. So we could look at their social media. Who's posting these pictures? Is it always the same people? Is it a department? Is this a personal account or a business account? Where are these pictures being taken? Where are these documents created? What is actually creating these documents? Which version of Word is it? Are they using Word or is it showing up as PDFs? Is it both? Do they have any job listings, either past or present? What's being listed? What tools and services are listed as required for that job? What's the description for that job? Especially if you can find old job postings, that can actually be really helpful so that you can figure out what is currently happening with the company. And this will be able to give us a lot more information about what's actually going on behind the scenes of the company. Now, DNS recon. Technically, DNS security, DNS originally had no security built in. It really wasn't a confidentiality thing. It was protection for forged or manipulated DNS data, so things like poisoning DNS caches. But originally, DNS really didn't have any security built into it, so that's hopefully starting to change a little bit, but isn't really there yet. Now, some things that we can look at for DNS. So, DNS, or the domain name system, is basically how we are able to translate the website into an IP address. Now, the IP address is going to be the actual server where we are hosting a lot of our information. And the DNS is how we're able to make sure that we are finding the correct pieces of information. So you can use something called Fierce. It's a tool that is more of a brute force, and it can give you quite a bit of examples. You can do something like NSLOOKUP. That's not going to give you as many pieces of data as Fierce, but it's usually available anywhere. Both Fierce and NSLOOKUP, you can get access to these almost anywhere. Part of what we want to look for when we're looking at our name servers and name systems is, do we have subdomains? What's the list of the subdomains? Are there alternate name servers? So most companies should have a split DNS system. So they have the publicly available pages and the privately available pages. Now, if they've done this properly, we should be able to see the publicly available ones, but not the privately available ones. A lot of companies, we can actually also see the names of the servers that are out there. So there are some really common names like prod is production. Maybe you'll see test or testing, and that's usually where they'll be doing as it says on the box, all of the testing for all of these services. And so we can actually find some of that. We can also find some subdomains where we would be able to find information like maybe this is the subdomain that's only used by marketing, or this is only used by dev. And it's not exactly publicly accessible, but if we know it's there, then we would be able to find some more information about that. Now, again, normally I would have a pause when we would do an activity and we would try some passive scans. So we would be able to find some things like who is the owner of this address, what is the information that's associated with this, what can we be told about the server, and some of this information is actually really very valuable. Now, you'll see I do have a caution here. Nmap or ZenMap, I do not do. Please do not do. There's not a way for you to do this comfortably and safely and reasonably at home. This is something that you would normally only do in class in a protected environment, because Nmap and ZenMap are incredibly useful tools that can completely blow up in your face if you do it wrong. So Nmap is basically one of the ways that we can look at a computer and find a bunch of information about a computer, including things like which ports are open, who does that computer connect to, and this is a very, very obvious thing that happens. If you are running Nmap or ZenMap on a computer, it's going to set off all kinds of red flags and potentially get your IP address banned, so please don't do this. What you can do, however, is take a break, pause me here, and go find one or two more passive tools. Look at how they work and how they avoid detection. What makes it a passive tool versus an active tool, and how does it make sure that people can't tell what we're doing? Now, the next thing that we have when we look at recon and as we're collecting all of this data, we're going to see traps. Now, the idea behind traps is basically a one-upmanship game. If we have somebody that is trying to defend the company against the exact thing that it is that we are trying to do, we're going to end up in this sort of adversarial conflict. So one of the ways that companies defend against some of the things we're doing, like data scraping, is we can actually have some traps set up to be able to tell if somebody is scraping the data from our website. So I'm going to call some of these honey traps. The older term was considered a honey pot. This is actually mildly offensive now, because the honey pot term was actually coming from the old police officers. You can Google it if you would like to know more about that, but we're going to refer to them as honey traps. So let's say, for example, we have somebody who is coming in and scraping the website. So scraping a website means that they have set a little script to go through the website to look for specific things. Email addresses are really popular because phishing campaigns are basically really cheap and easy to set up. So one of the things that we can do is we can have emails that are only seen by scrapers. We can have a fake email account that is really only seen by a scraper, and we know that if we have mail coming to that email account, somebody was scraping our data because we don't give that email account out. There's not a real person there. So we can do that to be able to sort of get a heads up, hey, a phishing attack might be coming. We could also do things like have fake social media accounts. So we could have a fake employee social media account to sort of try to trap somebody into sending a message, because we know that's not a real person. So if somebody says, oh, hey, I saw you on Facebook. Do you remember when we were in college together? Could you please open this file for me? You would be able to say, actually, that's really suspicious. Let's be aware that somebody is trying to attack the company. Other things that we can do is we can do things like white text on a white background, black text on a black background, very, very small text. One of the things you do have to be careful of for all of this, if you're going to be putting junk information in here, you have to be careful of accessibility. A lot of the screen readers are very difficult to tell from a bot, so you want to make sure that you're actually testing against a screen reader as well as you're doing this, so that you aren't making it completely awful for people to use. Now, some other things that we could do. Let's say, for example, going back to the email, employee lists, emails, names can be valuable information. So instead of having name at doe.com, one of the things that we could do is we could start spelling this out. Now, from a human perspective, the difference between Jane at symbol doe.com versus spelling out Jane at doe.com versus CEO at doe.com. All of these are actually a little bit harder to tell a computer program what it's looking for. If you have the at symbol, the website .com or .org, that's actually relatively straightforward to write, even for example a regular expression for, so that we can say I want to look for the at symbol followed by some set of characters followed by dot followed by 3 characters. That's something we can easily tell a program to go look for. However, trying to tell a program to go look for the word at, that's a little bit harder. We might be able to do things like have the program look for .com spelled out, DOT space COM, and we could look at that. We're probably going to have some more junk data coming through, so we might have to tailor that a little bit more, but those are some of the things that we can do that will defeat some of the more common scrapers. You can also do things like you can limit searching by timeout or browser headers. So for example, browsers will actually give the information, hey, I'm on a mobile device, hey, I'm on a desktop, or in some cases, in the case of bots, hey, I'm headless. I don't have a header because I'm not a real person. So we can do things like look for those as well and say, oh, well, if this is a headless browser, then this isn't a real person, this is some variety of bot, and I'm just going to block all the bots. Now, obviously, this is going to have some downsides, as in this is how Google also searches, so that SEO is going to go down, but it's things that we can consider. Now, when we are talking about pen testing, we're talking about sort of all the fun things that you can do and the interesting information that we can have and all of that, but part of what has to go along with this is always going to be reporting. Reporting is not necessarily going to be the most fun portion of the job, but it is really needed. Going in and having all of this fun doing a pen test is great, but jobs don't pay you to go have fun and 100% of the time have fun. You have to have an actual product. And in the case of ethical hacking and pen testing, the actual product is the report that is pulling together all of the information that you found and sharing it so that the company can say, oh, I didn't even realize that was public. Oopsie, let me go fix that. Now, a report is what we're turning in at the end. We're going to be sharing it with the company. It shows what works, what didn't, what their vulnerabilities are, and some samplings of data to prove that we found what we found. Now, the temptation is going to be to use something like OpenOffice. The problem is when we do pen testing, we're actually going to be getting quite a bit of very odd data. So we're probably going to be having some variety of Nmap or Zenmap scan. We're probably going to be having some PCAP files because we've captured some packets. We might have some plain text files. OpenOffice, Microsoft Word don't really deal well with these odd types of data, and pasting in these sort of screenshots of stuff doesn't always really fly. And once we start getting into larger documents, it also turns into a real problem because writing a 5-page, 10-page document isn't the worst thing in the world, but I mean, this pen testing report could easily be 100 pages, 100 plus pages, and trying to make that work on OpenOffice is not a good time. So what they actually did is they created some reporting software that pen testers use. Now, 2 of the popular ones are Magic Tree and Dratus. Now, Magic Tree is basically very straightforward, and the way that it works is it uses what's called a tree structure. So the tree structure allows us to have all of this data put together and accessible and figure out how we want it organized. For this particular class, I actually have everybody use Dratus because I find the documentation is a little bit better. It's also a little bit easier to work in a group with. So the way that Dratus actually works is it uses something called nodes. So rather than folders, we have nodes. Rather than vulnerabilities, we have issues. And if we have checklists and timelines, we have methodologies. So the idea is you can take all of your different types of files and data, put them all together into this program. And because of the way it's set up, it's actually accessible at an IP address or website. So if we have 5 different people working on the team, they can all upload their information, and Dratus will help us keep it all together and show it in a way that's a little bit easier to work with. So we would be able to upload all of our PCAPs and ZenMap files and plain text files and script reports and PDFs and all of that information. We would be able to have things like our scope up here as well. We can upload all of our files in here. We can give different people credentials so that they can log in and add information as we go. And then because we have the methodology spread out, explained really carefully, we are also able to see exactly what we did for how to get this. And one of the things about documentation is the best way to do documentation is as you go. Trying to go back later is never going to be a good choice. I always recommend working on the documentation as you're working on the project, because that's just going to make your life a lot easier. So being able to keep all of this together and say, okay, well, Susan is going to take these 2 things, Jane is going to take these 2 things, and, Jack is going to take those 2 things. And being able to spread that out, everybody's working off of the same checklists, everybody has the same timelines in there, everybody is able to upload all of their information to this one single source. It'll make generating this report a lot easier at the end. So, what I would recommend is just try it out. It's totally free. It's already in Kali. Start up Dratus, start the first report. There's a community edition. You can upload any data that you might have from any of your OSINT that you've done. They have some documentation that you can go look at and see what it looks like. Start playing around with it. As long as you're hosting it locally, you don't have to worry about anything going wrong. And you can just start kind of exploring to see what it looks like. So I hope you were able to learn something in this section on recon, and I hope you are all having a lovely day.